that if we're not willing to take a little of our time and write letters to our friends from high school and family members we don't like to talk to, if we aren't willing to give up going out to dinner and give up cable television and give up all these little niceties to write bigger checks to guys like Irwin Cain and to the Hopkins County Republican Party, if you're not willing to do those things, if we're not willing to inspire our neighbors and friends to do those things, 2011 is going to be a really bad legislative session. But more importantly, the future of Texas and the future of our country doesn't look very promising. But it can look great if we're willing to recapture just a little bit what our founding fathers did for themselves, for their children, and for all of us 200 and some odd years later. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your patience with me, and thank you for letting me be with you tonight. And I completely forgot to pass around our little clipboards. If you would like to get on our email newsletter and that kind of stuff, I'll pass these around. You can't go to a political event without giving up all of your privacy, so also write your bank account number, PIN account, all that kind of stuff on the back. That would be great. We're a nonprofit. So no, but thank you for letting me be here.
To slow down the effect of people like Acorn and their subsidiary corporations who are involved in voter fraud in our state.
Oh, slow them down. Why would we want to do that? The United States Congress today just passed legislation making it easier for those people to do that stuff. The Disclose Act, you all familiar with this, passed Congress today. Liberals are really good at using positive words and making them evil. Liberal is what we all really are. We're really the liberals. I don't know if you were aware of that or not, but we're the ones pushing the bounds of liberty. That's what a liberal is. They stole that from us, and now we have to go with conservatives, which that sounds nice, but at the end of the day, liberal sounds a lot more cool, frankly. They're good at stealing good names and perverting them with really bad ideas. The Disclose Act empowers the labor unions and the leftist groups while stripping away more free speech rights from conservatives. That's what the United States Congress did today under that barbarian from San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi. In Texas, there are a couple interesting things going on. Obviously, the voter ID legislation that was killed by inaction by Todd Smith, a Republican from Tarrant County, would have been very helpful. The demonstration that the person voting is really the person who's supposed to be voting, that's critical. And we have to have that in place. It is no mistake that Acorn and all these various liberal groups were strongly opposed to voter ID and were working very hard to kill voter ID because that's the way they steal elections. But don't deceive yourself that voter ID alone is the way to fix the voter fraud issue. In fact, more voter fraud takes place, we suspect, because of mail-in ballots. And that's where your Democratic Party's nominee for governor excels in ballot fraud. Mr. White, when he was the chair of the Democratic Party back in the 1990s here in Texas, Mr. White was a plaintiff in a lawsuit to keep military ballots from being counted in a couple of elections. So our fine men and women serving us in obscene places around the planet who are having to vote with bullets whizzing over their heads, he didn't want their ballots counted, and yet Mr. White and his party think it's okay for someone to show up and vote 14 times under various assumed names. That's not a problem, but you really can't have military personnel voting. Yes, sir.
What's Judge Straus keeping his position? Is there a movement to root him out?
The question was, what are the chances of Texas House Speaker Joe Straus keeping his seat? The dear good Lord has seen fit to, I'm 6'4", so you can't usually see the top of my head, but there really is nothing up there. I would suggest that perhaps Mr. Straus has a similar chances as me regrowing my hair. I think that the numbers just don't work out for him very well. Mr. Straus made a pledge, I would argue a bargain with the devil, but made a pledge that he would not work against any incumbent, which means he is not helping any Republican who is seeking to unseat a Democrat, definitionally. That's what that means. He said, I will not help, or I won't go against any incumbent, which means he's not helping Republicans unseat Democrats. That's problematic, I would suggest to you, from both a party perspective. It's also problematic from Mr. Straus' perspective, because that means that each person who gets elected, who unseats a Democrat, has no loyalty to him. And the speaker's races are all about loyalty. They're all about who helped who bring who to the dance. And if you're not intimately involved in helping bring people to the dance, what good are you? You might look good in a tuxedo, but really, what's your value politically to them? So going into this cycle, I would suggest to you that if Republicans continue to do what we do best, which is snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, if we really push hard with snatching defeat from jaws of victory, we still go into the legislative session with about 82 seats in the Texas House, going from the current 77. We've added one already, that's 78. Then add 4 more seats and take your pick of 8 or 10 seats, all of whom have really good chances to win. That puts you at 82 or higher. That's now a large number of Republicans who had no help coming from the speaker. You can take a look at a lot of incumbent Republicans in the primaries who got no help from the speaker and whose opponents were helped by friends of the speaker. Wow, that didn't help anyone from a Straus perspective. You've got Democrats who have decided that Straus isn't doing enough for them. To Speaker Straus's credit, he's been kind of pushing against some of the Democrats a little bit. Well, that's made them mad. He's also been pushing against some of the Republicans, making them mad. There's a fellow who once said about 2,000 years ago that, be hot or cold, but don't be lukewarm or I'll spit you out of my mouth. I believe that our House Speaker is finding that being lukewarm isn't a very happy place to be politically. And I suspect that that's what we'll see. Now, with all that said, you can easily see 84, 85 Republicans as the majority in the Texas House, and none of whom really wanting the job or having the ability to convince each other of it. And so Joe Straus stays on as Speaker. I would suggest to you that creates a real problem for Straus. You have 85 Republicans. Is he going to, though, maintain this 50-50 split between Republican and Democrat committee chairs? Well, if he busts even one Democratic committee chair, the Democrats will riot in the streets. He's painted himself into such a strange corner. I don't know how he gets out of it. He could. On the other hand, if Joe Straus commits to really appointing conservatives to the committee chairs, to heck with what the Democrats say, you could easily see the 85 Republicans all hanging together and supporting him. You could see that happen. So a whole lot of ways this plays out. My advice to Republican candidates and Republican members is you're in charge. You need to ask a lot of careful questions of the people who want to be Speaker of the House. Make them pledge to you what they're going to do in charge. Now, an interesting historic note and legal note is up until 2 years ago, the people in Texas could not participate in the speaker's race or in a speaker's race. It was actually against the law for people who weren't members of the Texas House to be involved in the decision of who is the next Speaker of the House going to be. A lawsuit was brought forward by Kelly Shackelford. He's the head of Liberty Institute based in Dallas, a great legal firm. If you ever find yourself battling big government, you want Kelly as your lawyer. I love Kelly Shackelford. He's a great guy. He brought a lawsuit saying that violates our First Amendment rights, our ability to speak and other things. The court sided with him. And so now, each one of us can be involved in the speaker's race, whether that's giving money, making phone calls, writing letters. It's probably a little early right now for any of us to be writing letters and making phone calls, maybe. But I would suggest to you that on that glorious first Wednesday in November, when you've got Irwin Cain as a state rep and you have all, 84, 85 members of the Republican members of the Texas House, we should probably all start paying close attention to that race and make sure that, Mr. Kane and all these other fellows who've lost their minds and run for office, that they know what we expect the legislature to achieve, and then allow that to help guide them in their decision about their internal House leadership. It's going to be a dicey decision, but one that will be a critical one.